Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamutirye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, but Prahlad learned in the womb. Text number 19 onwards. So Prahlad Maharaj is instructing his schoolmates that what he had learned from Narayani, the womb of his mother. Atma Nitya Avyaya Shuddha Eka Kshitragya Ashraya Avikriya Swadrig Hetura Vyapako Asangya Navritaha Etar Dwadash Bhirvidvan Atmano Lakshana Parahe Aham Ametiya Sadbhavam Dehado Mohajam Tyajet. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or the living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death, free from deterioration and free from material contamination. They are individual. They are the knowers of the external body and they are the foundation or shelter of everything. They are free from material change. They are self-eliminated. They are the cause of all causes and they are all pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body and therefore they are always uncovered. Uncovered means they are not covered by these material modes of nature. The consciousness gets covered, but not Atma. With these transcendental qualities, one who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life, in which one thinks, I am this material body and everything in relationship with this body is mine. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna clearly says, Mamai Vansho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanat. All the living entities are part of me. Therefore, the living entities are qualitatively the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the leader, the supreme among all the living entities. In the Vedas, it is said, Nityo Nityanam Chetna Chetnanam. The Lord is the chief individual living entity, the leader of the subordinate living entities. Because the living entities are parts or samples of God, their qualities are not different from those of the Supreme Lord. The living entities have the same qualities as the Lord, just as a drop of seawater is composed of the same chemicals as the great sea itself. Thus, there is oneness in quality, but a difference in quantity. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by understanding the sample, the living entity, because all the qualities of God exist in a minute quantity in the living entities. So, again and again, these verses come about the relationship between God and living entity. And Prabhupada explains nicely that we all, in quality, we are same as God because soul is part and parcel of God. But in quantity, we are very minute, very, very minute. We're like infinitesimal. And we are not going to become God. We were never God. But still, Mayavadis, they come up with all these different arguments, logics, according to their mind, that is logic, and they just stuck to it. The living entities are smaller than the atom, but God is greater than the greatest. Our conception of greatness may be represented by the sky because we think of the sky as being unlimitedly big, but God is bigger than the sky. Similarly, we have knowledge that the living entities are smaller than the atoms, being 1/10,000 the size of the tip of the hair. Yet the quality of being the supreme cause of all causes exists in the living entity as well as in the Supreme Personality of God. Indeed, it is due to the presence of the living entity that the body exists and the bodily changes take place. Similarly, it is because the Supreme Lord is within this universe that the changes dictated by the material laws occur. So, so the changes in the body take place because the living entity is there. Otherwise, the body is dead. And so, what's the point? And no change is going to happen. And similarly, in the universe, the changes happen because the Supreme Lord is there, Super Soul is there. The word Eka means individual is significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, Matasthani Sarvabhutani. Everything, material and spiritual, including earth, water, fire, air, ether, sky, and the living entities, exist on the platform of Spirit Soul. Although everything is an emanation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not think that the Supreme Lord is dependent upon anything else. Both God and the living entity are fully conscious. As living entities, we are conscious of our bodily existence. Similarly, the Lord is conscious of the gigantic cosmic manifestation. This is confirmed in Vedas. Yasmin Vayu Prithvi Chantariksham. All these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. One is great and the other is small, but both of them are the cause of all causes, the corporeally limited and the universally unlimited. Although here Prabhupada says the living entities in the body is conscious of a body existence, and Super Soul is Super Soul is there in the universal body, so conscious of the universal body. But Super Soul is also in individual bodies as well. So he is conscious, so he is aware of everything in our body as well. That part is just so difficult to conceive. We should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of knowledge, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they are equal in quantity also. Their intelligence is called avishuddh buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the supreme cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva, they surrender unto him. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect souls. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great, Vibhu, whereas a living entity is small, Anu, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material body, and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. This is called Aham Mama. This is illusion. One must give up this illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. But the problem is, as Prabhupada someplace else, 99.9% people are in this illusion. That I am this body, everything related with this body is mine, and I just have to work for everything that is related to my body. Whether it is my family, my community, my society, my state, my country, it's all my. But that my is only, I'm based on the body. But the body will change, as Prahlad Maharaj explained yesterday. Body goes through birth, remains for some time, produces byproducts, transforms, and then vanishes and dwindles and vanishes. That's it. It's a soul that is permanent, not the body. Body is another shloka that says in Bhagavad Gita, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The body will die and the soul does not die. Text 21. Swarnam yatha gravasu hemakara kshetreshu yogyastad abhya apniyat kshetreshu deheshu tathatma yogyar adhyatma vid brahma gatim labheta. An expert geologist can understand where there is gold and by various processes can extract it from gold ore. Similarly, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body. And thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, as one who's not expert cannot understand where there is gold, a foolish person who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge cannot understand how the spirit exists within the body. So here is a very good example concerning spiritual understanding. Foolish rascals, including so-called jnanis, philosophers, and scientists, cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body because they're lacking in spiritual knowledge. The Vedas enjoin that vijnanartham sa gurumeva vigacchit. To understand spiritual knowledge, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one has been trained in geology, one cannot detect gold in stone. Similarly, unless one has been trained by a spiritual master, he cannot understand what is spirit and what is matter. Here it is said, Yogyas tat abhigya. This indicates that one who has connected himself with the spiritual knowledge can understand that there is a spirit soul within the body. However, one who is in an animalistic conception of life and has no spiritual culture cannot understand. As an expert mineralogist or geologist can understand where there is gold and can then invest his money to dig there and chemically separate the gold from the ore. An expert spiritualist can understand where the soul is within matter. One who has not been trained cannot distinguish between gold and stone. Similarly, fools and rascals who have not learned from an expert spiritual master what is soul and what is matter cannot understand the existence of soul within the body. To understand such knowledge, one must be trained in the mystic yoga system or finally in the bhakti yoga system. So without being trained in this bhakti yoga or getting the eyes open with the torch of knowledge, one cannot understand the spiritual aspect of life. Cannot understand we are not this body, we are spirit souls. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya Mama Vijanati. Unless one takes shelter of the Bhakti Yoga process, one cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita begins by teaching Dehinosmin Yatha Dehe. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Thus, the first instruction is that one should understand that the soul is within the body and is transmigrating from one body to another. This is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. Any person who is not expert in understanding this science or is unwilling to understand it remains in the bodily conception of life or the animalistic conception of life, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. So any person who is not expert in understanding this science, that we are not this body, we are spirit souls, spirit soul is inside the body and is transmigrating from one body to another. And this is a purpose, he is just like an animal. Every member of human society should clearly understand the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. For only in this way one can be spiritually elevated and automatically give up the false, illusory knowledge by which one thinks, I am this body and everything belonging to this body is mine. This doggish conception should be rejected immediately. One should be prepared to understand the spirit soul and the Supreme Spirit, God, who are eternally related. Thus, one may return home back to Godhead having solved all the problems of life. So, the problems of life is not that I don't have a job, or I don't have a house, or I'm still living in a rental place, or I don't have a car, or I don't have a new clothes, or I don't get promotion. That's not the problem. The real problem of life is, which is common to all: birth, old age, disease, death. These are the real problems, and how to solve them. That's a goal. अष्टो प्रकृतया प्रोक्तास्त्रय एव हि तद्गुणा विकारा षोडशाचार्य पुमान एका समन्वयात्. The Lord's 8 separated material energies, the 3 modes of nature, and the 16 transformations, which means the 11 senses and the 5 gross elements, material elements like earth and water. Within all these, the one spiritual soul exists as the observer. Therefore, all the great acharyas have concluded that the individual soul is conditioned by these material elements. So these material elements were all enumerated by Kapil Dev in his Sankhya Yoga philosophy. So here Prabhupada says, as explained in the previous verse, Kshetreshu Deheshu Tathat, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body. And thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. The intelligent person who is expert in finding the self within the body must understand the 8 external energies. Which are listed in Bhagavad Gita: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 comprise my separated material energies. Bhumi, earth, includes all the objects of sense perception: Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Shabda, and Sparsha. Within the earth are the fragrance of roses, the taste of sweet fruit, and whatever else we want. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sarva Kama Dugha Mahi, the earth, Mahi, contains all our requirements. Thus, the objects of sense perception are all present in Bhumi, or the earth. The gross material elements and subtle material elements constitute the total material energy. Within the total material energy are the 3 material modes or qualities. These qualities, Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun, belong not to the soul, but to the material energy. It is because of the interaction of these 3 material modes of nature that the 5 knowledge-gathering senses, the 5 working senses, and their controller, the mind, are manifested. So, Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun. These are 3 modes of nature. So the knowledge-acquiring senses, which are eyes and nose and ears and tongue for tasting, and the skin for touch. And then the 5 working senses. Now, they all work according to the different modes of nature. Just like for an animal. Now, if the animal is cow is an animal in mode of goodness, tiger in passion, and monkey in ignorance, or elephant is also considered in ignorance. Now, they have the same senses, eyes and ears and the tongue and whatever, but they will go, or they will like the things according to their modes. That is why, like cow is in mode of goodness. So she only eats things which are in mode of goodness. It's not just flesh. and bones and whatever material the body made of, there's a subtle body inside. And then, and accordingly, because of those modes, the senses are developed according to that mode. And if somebody tries to play with it, change it, because human beings, we are given higher, better intelligence. So we like to play with nature. We want like not play with nature. We like to mess with nature. So that is why in a few years back, there was a disease called mad cow disease. So what these scientists, out of their super brains, what they were doing, they were feeding cows along with the grass, they were feeding them meat. Why? So that the cows grow faster, because they're thinking the protein is going inside, they'll grow faster, and we can cut them up and sell the flesh at a better rate, because faster and bigger the cows will grow. But they never understand this philosophy of mode of goodness and passion and ignorance. Cow is in the mode of goodness, so she eats everything that is in the mode of goodness. If you feed her this thing, then what happened? The genetics got changed, and they developed mad cow disease. And people who ate that meat, they died. There was so much of chaos and problem that, I don't know, millions and millions of cows were slaughtered without anybody getting that meat. They were slaughtered and then buried. So, because in school education, these things are not taught. Mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Human beings, now we have been given this independence, a choice. We can choose to win goodness, passion, or ignorance. It's up to us. But the body, human body, is not made for passion or ignorance. It is made for goodness only. It can work in either cases. That's how the independence works. But predominantly, this is in mode of goodness, or it can take us beyond. So that is why there are choices in human forms. When Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, means he is giving an instruction that if we follow, Krishna will take care. But it's up to us. If we don't want to follow, it's up to us. So everything is very scientifically created and maintained in the nature. But we'd like to mess it up. So Prabhupada further says, then according to these modes, the living entity gets the opportunity to perform different types of karma with different types of knowledge, thinking, feeling, and willing. Thus the body machine begins to work. This has all been properly analyzed in Sankhya Yoga by the great acharyas, especially by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna in his incarnation as Devahuti Putra Kapila. This is indicated here by the word acharya. We need not follow anyone who is not an authorized acharya. One can understand the truth fully when he has taken shelter of an expert acharya. The living entity is individual, but the body is a composition of many material elements. This is proved by the fact that as soon as a living entity quits this combination of material elements, it becomes a mere conglomeration of matter. The matter is qualitatively one, and the spiritual soul is qualitatively one with the Supreme. The Supreme is one and the individual soul is one, but the individual soul is understood to be the master of the individual combination of material elements. So soul is supposed to rule over, control the material elements. The material energy is in fact divided into 24 elements. The individual soul, the owner of the individual body, is a 25th subject, and above everything is the Lord Vishnu as Paramatma, the supreme controller, who's the 26th subject. When one understands all these and above, all these 26 subjects, he becomes Adhyatma Vid, an expert in understanding the distinction between matter and spirit. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kshetra Kshetragyor Jnanam, understanding of the Kshetra, the constitution of the body and of the individual soul and the super soul, constitutes real Jnana or knowledge. Unless one ultimately understands that the Supreme Lord is eternally related with the individual soul, one's knowledge is imperfect. So that's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanam Mante. After many, many births and deaths, he is actually in knowledge, surrendering me to be the cause of all causes and all that. It's such a great soul is very rare. So one who has this knowledge and after many, many lifetimes, then he surrenders unto me. Upon understanding this perfect knowledge, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when one understands and when one surrenders and engages in devotion service, that's it. That's the, like this is the beginning of the end of this material life. But everything is so very well designed, created, maintained by the Lord, that it looks amazing. What are these modes of nature? And how do we act under those modes? And how devotional service takes us beyond the three modes. Because even in the mode of goodness, it is still binding, it is still entangling us to the material world. But it's very, very mind-boggling, because these modes of material nature, they don't let us go so easily. It's very difficult, very, very difficult. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.